Thank you. So the context here, local developers take all. Thinking about the current real estate kind of environment, what does that mean to you? Local developers take all. We've had a community wealth building nuance to our sessions, sort of community first, developer second, but we're flipping that on its head for this conversation. What does that mean to you? You want to start?
Sure. So what that means to me is that the development team needs to have local thoughts, local concerns, local history, and local involvement, right? So, the opportunity for the people in this room that are looking to get into development, there might be an opportunity to join a team and serve a part on another team as opposed to waiting for the opportunity where you have to do it all yourself. And that's a big part of what we do. BHI, we really focus on the building of the team, right? Now, so I'll give you an example. I got started, I bought my house. It had a rental property in the basement. So that becomes my first foray. Wound up going out, buying 2 4-unit buildings, learned a lot through that process. I got an opportunity to partner. We went out and bought a 34-unit building, and we bought a 39-unit building, and we bought a 21-unit building. And now, instead of taking all the risk and needing to learn everything on my own, I got a chance to be involved in a process that allowed me to grow with the support of others that have done it before. And I think that was an important part of my process, and I think that's an important part of where the local involvement can get a chance to really help with the development. What the community needs. Another developer might be just looking at the finances, but you could get a chance to create a part by being local. So I think that's what it means to me, is that local thoughts, local concerns help make the project that much stronger.
Okay, what say you, Greg? How would you build on that?
I'm going to take the counter to that.
Okay.
And I'm not saying what you said was wrong at all. It's just, I'm going to just take a counter mindset that exists. And it exists in a lot of our cities and a lot of our city halls, actually. And it's very unfortunate. And that is, there's several factors that in some cases will favor out-of-town developers coming to Norfolk, coming to Virginia Beach, coming to Newport News, even though there is a serious mindset among many leaders that we want to develop the local developers. If you look at the SHIP plan that just is developing in the city of Newport News, there's a real mindset for really building up local developers. So it does exist. It's just that it's hard to be a hero in your hometown. And what is an expert? There's some definition of an expert that has something to do with coming from out of town, right? It makes you more of an expert because there's an assumption that if you're one of us, you're not smarter than us, you're not better than us, you're not harder working than us, and we're not necessarily going to give you a chance. There's also a jealousy factor. And that really stinks. Jealousy is like a horrible emotion. It is like drinking acid. It's a horrible thing, but it still exists. And so it's there is a movement towards this, which I think is great. And I don't actually know of any place at this moment that's being talked about more than actually Newport News. But there is a movement towards this, but which I love. But there's also a jealousy and a mindset that's like, if you're coming from out of town, you must know what you're doing, right? So that's just a slightly counter to that.
A little balance. I think that also creates the opportunity, right? Because then the out-of-towner.
You don't have a mic.
I don't, do I? I was just saying, I think though that exactly what creates the opportunity, the programs, the local, for the in-town person to have the credibility of the out-of-town person, to have the experience, to have the voice of the local leaders because they are partnered with an out-of-town person with a track record, with all of that, and then that allows them to grow and get past the jealousy to the point where they have that proven track record, and no longer are they seen as the startup. And so they got to get there somehow. And so I think we're probably saying the same thing in that. Thank you. So we're probably saying the same thing in that it's with the out-of-town help, the local developer can get a chance to maybe move farther. Look at a smaller percentage of a deal, but maybe that deal is that much more likely to be successful.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll give you an example of that real quick. I was working on an industrial park in Hampton for several years, and I couldn't get Hampton, even though I had great relationships in Hampton. I was part of I'm not even a Hampton resident, and they put me on the team to go to somewhere, Denver a few years ago for Hampton to apply and put on a show to be voted in as an all-American city. So as a non-resident, to be put on that, I graduated from Hampton High School, so my roots are there. So I have great relationships. But I couldn't get all the way into a development until I brought in a company from out of town. Now, they're experts in industrial development. I'm not. They have $500 million in the bank. I didn't. And so there were factors that made sense. But bringing them in, getting a smaller piece of it, we got an 840,000 square foot industrial complex off the ground. It's built, it's done. So being the local guy, bringing them in, that it made a difference. But still, as the local guy, I couldn't do it by myself.
so I'll push back a little bit because I think we do, maybe in the industrial world, there's the out-of-town developer is welcome. Not in the multifamily world here. I mean, Virginia Beach ran off a developer who came down to present an opportunity in front of the convention center. And the one thing that stuck with me, your point, Jason, just because you're not owning the development doesn't mean you're not a developer. If you're learn the lessons on someone else's dollar. There is a lot of stuff that has to go into each and every development. And it's a minute detail on a geotechnical report could cost so much money. And that's the first thing, that's the dirt, And so understanding and learning slowly each and every portion. And even in my firm, I've got the construction knowledge, I've got the report knowledge. My partner, Dan, he's the finance one. He knows the ins and outs of writing the pro formas and doing the deal flow and making sure that we're all of the Excel files and iterations and speaking with the banks and financing arms and partnerships. So from that perspective, you can work, there are plenty of people, they're out there willing to help. And it doesn't have to be the big grand thing at first. I know we came in and helped Alvin Keels, who was a sports agent in Portsmouth, and he came to us and he was recommended to us, and we've helped him through a few deals and kind of just some of the minute details. And it is, speaking about it earlier, it's getting to know council members, it's understanding what's happening, what is the city expecting. Some people call me crazy because I listen and watch every single planning commission and every single city council hearing in Virginia Beach. I know exactly what's going on and what they're thinking. And that allows me to understand what are the goals, or to bend their ear and say, look, I heard you say this, what do you think about this instead? Knowing the municipality is going to be critical in, one, knowing what you're investing in and if it's going to work, and the need to like getting it done. And so all those years I worked for Breeden, I didn't own anything, but people asked what I did, I was still a real estate developer.
So, good segue. I was going to ask, you took us through your backstory a little bit. What was the first entry into development, and what was the first kind of real learning moment?
It was, Ryan, when I was working for Ryan Homes, I was green. They going through their like training program. They're a Fortune 500 company owned by MDR, top 3, I think, builder. I think they actually own 25% right now of market share here in Hampton Roads with new home construction. Yeah, built hundreds of homes for them, and they've got a rubric. You were learning everything from the simplest tasks at first, and to all, so really it was kind of laid out for me from a construction standpoint, understanding and attention to detail, and that was really very helpful with my like business mindset, dealing with customers, having that professional world experience coming from kitchens, and I grew up doing leasing, but that wasn't, that was leasing apartments, right? So being in a position or with a company that was willing to dedicate the time and energy to train or provide the guidance was integral in learning and coming to where I was. Now, I will say, when I got to Breeden, I thought every day for about 6 months that they were going to figure it out, that I knew nothing and I was getting fired. So it's a little bit of that fear kind of drives the necessity to get it done. It's like, I need this. Like, I've got my family's depending on this. So I think being a little scared is sometimes good too.
So did you have a moment where you busted your butt, or so far so good?
It always feels that way. It feels that way today. It feels that way this week. We've got a very large project we're presenting to the City of Portsmouth on Tuesday to rebuild their city hall with them, and we're partnering with MEP Contractors and Clark Nixon. That's a $100 million deal, and the one thing about development is there's no job is alike. Everything is, and it sometimes feels like no job is easy, right? But there's always something. If it seems easy, you're probably missing something.
Same question for you, Greg. We talked about how you got into real estate in general, but that transition into development, I would imagine, was different. What was that? And what was your first real learning moment?
So development can have many different definitions. And so a precursor for doing what might be considered real development, and I like what you said, that you don't have to own it to be the developer. You're still the guy getting it done, or the lady getting it done, right? So buying my first house that I mentioned, I found an old lawyer that was handling an estate for a family, and they were trying to liquidate the properties, and I was able to convince him to sell me a house on 18th Street, downtown Newport News, in a place called Stewart Gardens. The value was about $14,000. I didn't try to get a bargain, but it was $1,000 down payment and a $13,000 owner financing, because nobody would finance me. I don't know how, but somehow my first year of college, I got 2 credit cards with $500 limits on them. And I borrowed $500 from each of those credit cards and got the $1,000 and got my first rental property. I then bought my second property. I was still 19. And I don't even know how I really did it, but I got an owner-occupied loan. But like in your case, and it's like, this is the way to start, folks. If you're not there yet, this is the way to start. I bought a house that had a house behind it. So it was like a duplex. Now the house behind it wasn't permitted, it wasn't built right, it was kind of homemade, and I ended up, because they wouldn't let me tear it down and rebuild later, I took a chainsaw through the middle of it and tore half of it down and rebuilt it, and then tore the other half of it down and rebuilt it because of a dumb rule in the city that I could rebuild half of it, but I couldn't rebuild all of it. But once I rebuilt the first half of it, I could rebuild the other half of it. So it's really a stupid way to build a house. But you gotta get around City Hall sometimes and stupid rules. You know, the back house is still standing, the front house is still standing. But, you know, but buying something as an owner occupant that has more than one unit. You know, you bought, your second stage, you said, was you bought 2 fourplexes. Now, we don't have a lot of those here, but we have some. And on a VA loan, on an FHA loan, on a simple owner-occupied loan, you can buy a fourplex. Unless you're too cool to live in that neighborhood, or you're too cool to live in that small of a unit. But don't worry about how cool you are. Buy a fourplex, buy a duplex. And that's, I didn't buy a fourplex, but I bought that second property I bought was effectively a duplex. And then very quickly I started building my real estate practice because I realized that, you know, buying rental property wasn't going to make me any money. I mean, I didn't think that it was, but it was the beginning of trying to build wealth. But trying to make money to live on and to subsidize the losses and the problems that come up with owning rental property, I really built my real estate brokerage business, helping people buy and sell houses, which is still the main thing that our main company does. And through that process, I was able to make enough money to be able to qualify for loans, and went to the city, who had this new program with the lowest interest rate I had ever heard of since I've been in the business, which was 7%. Interest rates were 11 or 12%. They were on the way to 17.5%, which is where they peaked. But the day I got my real estate license, interest rates were 8%. They went to 8.5% that month, and never went back until they hit 17.5%, and then started coming down, trickling down. But I was able to go to the city, and they wanted to remodel a portion of the city, which is a great way to get started. When the city wants to do something, they will put money behind it, and sometimes they will bend the rules to try to help you, and especially if you're local, to try to help you to get that done. It'll be in the worst parts of the city, but the worst parts of the city, if you, with enough people involved, will become one of the much better parts and restored parts of the city. And I started a little company called Hampton Heritage Development. I was 21, 22, I don't even know, probably 22 years old. And we started buying old Victorian houses built in 1890, 1905, and remodeling them properly and turning them into long-term rental properties.
Sweet. You remember the question?
I do. I think you people are pretty much familiar with my origin story, right? I mean, I just went through, like you said, the house. But I think along the way,
Did you bust your butt?
Oh, yeah.
What was that real learning moment?
There are a few that come to mind. I mean, one thing that comes to mind is that you talked about partnering, right? And we talk about learning with, you know, using the experience of others. But I also learned that it was less stressful being on a project where my house is not part of the collateral, you know, and someone else is taking the risk, you know, and as a result of that, they deserve the lion's share of the profit, you know. But at the same time, that allowed me to be in position to be able to fully and honestly analyze and participate in a project without the constant stress and without the you know, those things that come. And I think you talked about, you know, no project is perfect. You know, you talk about things. I think the other thing that I learned is, you know, no matter how much time you spend developing the perfect plan, it's not going to go that way, right? And so having the ability to continue to look at those risks and to continue to be ahead of them and to look at contingency plans and to know when to pivot is a very, very strong talent, you know, that was necessary along the way. And I think that was those are important lessons, because things did go wrong and we had to figure out a way to get around it.
I could give you the go wrong
You want to give us one, and then I'll pause for questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of two quick go wrong stories was, as I got so excited about buying property, I just spent like half my time trying to figure out how to buy property instead of 90% of my time generating revenue. That was a big mistake, because you've
Wait,
got to
say that again,
generate
that went
revenue.
over my head. One more
Okay.
time.
So I remember I'm in the real estate brokerage business at 19, helping people buy and sell houses. Well, you get a commission for that, right? And so that's where you pay the bills. That's where you build up money. You need to be, if you're going to be an investor, you've got to make in revenue in your job, in your paycheck, in your commissions. You've got to make a lot more than you need to live on. So I was making like enough to live on, and then I was spending the rest of my time trying to acquire properties. Well, those properties eventually go sideways, they get termites, the roof leaks, the tenant doesn't pay, right? And so you got to have a revenue source somewhere else. So I was disproportional as a 22-year-old, disproportional where I was maybe 50-50 at trying to acquire properties versus making revenue. And I should have been 90% making revenue and buying 1 or 2 houses at a time instead of buying 10 houses a year, in which I was doing probably 20 houses 1 year. But that creates risk. And so I got in trouble doing that. And then and not being prepared, like for 2006, that was early on, that was in the 80s. But go all the way up to relatively recently, for me it was recent, 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, here in Hampton Roads. I mean, in 7, things started going sideways, and I had a bunch of property, I had a bunch of rentals, and I was overly leveraged. I didn't have cash, I didn't have liquidity, and so not having liquidity is a second big mistake. Not spending your time making revenue that's more than what you need, and not having enough liquidity when things change. And things changed so fast in 2008 that it made our heads spin. And in 9, 10, 11, 12, in this market, it was just unbelievable of the foreclosures and the decline in value, and it was horrible. I mean, I lost money every single month for like 7 years in a row. And it just about killed me, just about wiped me out. Working 100 hours a week just to lose 50 to 100,000 a month was incredibly painful. And so being over leveraged was a big contributing factor for that, which is a different problem than not making enough revenue, right? Spending your time all with invest, and not creating a revenue stream that can get you out of the hole when those investments go sideways.
Go ahead, Brandy.
How'd you survive? Did you just take out like second mortgages?
We're just selling off property, and it was a nightmare. Yeah, just selling off, and you're selling at a discount because everything's going down. So, and then you got to fix them up, and then if you did refinance, then you got to recapture IRS, and the IRS is after you, and it's a nightmare. And in 2014 is when things we knew things were going to come back. That was a long number of years, from 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And then 14, it's like, we probably are going to survive, and we pulled it out of the ditch.
Wow.
Other questions? Y'all still awake and with us? Okay, here we go. Yeah.
What makes y'all successful?
What makes y'all successful? Yeah,
I think for me, the important part is knowing my role and playing my role and being part of and having the right team, and not trying to think that I can do everything.
People think I'm smart, but I'm not that smart. I think the two things that I've done maybe really well is outwork and outserve. Because if you're out working and you're trying to take advantage of situations or take advantage of people, that's a problem. But outwork, the blend of outwork and outserve, and I think the people that know me well would be able to validate that those are, because in the profession of real estate brokerage, there are three characteristics of the average person, the normal person in real estate brokerage. They're nice, they are, they're honest, they're nice, they're honest, and they're lazy. And so that creates a tremendous opportunity for someone that will outserve others and outwork others to excel.
So, all right, so that's an interesting question, but I'm gonna flip it. My success, what makes me successful? I'll say I've got, the cutest little 4-year-old, loving wife at home, and that drives everything, right? So, the success is what, is empowering. I feel like I'm a part of the community. And candidly, I none of the deals that I'm in, I have more than 10% of an ownership share. It's enough. It's not enough. It's enough for right now. But the success is the people I work with and the people I surround myself, loving the community that I'm in, doing everything I can to support the community. I think what drives me and the desire to have more financial success is the ability to be more philanthropic at some point in my life, give back to the organizations that matter most to me, because to be real, not every project can be the best, it's financial picture, it's got to make money. So not every project, and to the question that was on the last panel, all these projects in DC, and they look so great. Well, they look great, but can you build it like that here? And so keeping the mind on what we need to do to make sure that we can be profitable to support our employees and make sure that they enjoy coming to work as much as I enjoy coming to work. And so it's kind of an ever changing. I think success is you can feel successful in the moment, but success is also a couple steps ahead, right? So making sure that it's not the flashy car, it's not the bigger house. It's because I think if you continue, if that's the goal of success, there's always going to be someone in front of you. It's an unsustaining chase, right? You're always going to feel hungry, and I think there's a comparison I'm not successful because I'm not my neighbor in the cul-de-sac who just bought a new car and has it has a bigger house that. We all fall into that trap, I think, and I think social media has kind of made that even worse of comparison. And I think measuring success is to do I feel satisfied? I feel satisfied right now. But there's still another bit to go, right?
I'll add one word to what Jimmy said, unsustaining, he said, and unfulfilling.
Yeah.
The bigger house, the bigger car, the bigger boat, it's not fulfilling.
You had a question, Art?
Yeah, so my question is about partnerships. There's good and bad partners and partnerships. And so could you guys say just a little bit about maybe some bad experiences with partnerships? I know, Jimmy, you talked about your 10% ownership and your finance partner. Greg, you talked a little bit about pulling in an out-of-state partner to do a deal. And then Jason, you talked a little bit about being pulled into some deals. But maybe give some bad examples of partnerships and what you learned from those negative examples.
So all of our partners are family members, right? For the most part. They are. We have a couple deals that are joint venture deals with people outside the firm. One thing that we found beneficial that our generation, 4 younger guys that are running the business, found really beneficial is setting up quarterly meetings. And we do it outside the office, and it's got an agenda. We talk through everything, and sometimes it can be negative, sometimes it can be positive. We've had plenty of jobs have cost overruns that are financially taxing. And it's a business discussion. It's not a personal discussion. They can get heated. And one of our, one thing we say, especially in our business, is we're a family business, but those two words hold equal weight. So it is a 50-50. We have to run a business, but we still have some family ties on that. And we treat our employees like that. It's kind of a family business atmosphere. And another point is, it's not my dollar, it's our dollar. So sometimes that means we take votes, and it could be 3-4, and the 4 have it. So understanding that it's always an evolving relationship, and it comes with respect and willingness to kind of you can't be rigid, right? So
Partnerships. Who is much more important than the details of the agreement? Now, the importance of the details of the agreement is so you won't have to wonder and remember what you agreed to, and reasonable people can remember an agreement in 2 different ways. Honest people can remember an agreement in 2 different ways. But who you're in partnership with is really important. So if it is that out-of-town company that's coming in to bring in, do your homework about them. Because I'd rather be in a partnership with one of these guys on either side of me on a handshake. We still should have an email, we should have a text, we should have an agreement, right? But I'd rather be in an honorable person's agreement, a partnership, than I would have the best lawyer in the world write a deal for me with somebody that has a dishonest reputation, or a hardline reputation, or a very selfish reputation. Because selfishness in partnerships that don't go very well together.
So I would say that transparency, which includes communication, right, and documentation, right, and alignment are very most important things. Like, for instance, in alignment, what is everybody's risk tolerance? Because that risk will come up, and some will be able to deal with it one way, some will run away from it. What's everybody's exit strategy? I'm in for 10 years, you want to cash out next year, there's going to be a problem. And so really, once you make sure the alignment is there, and then you document it, whether it's through the honest communication on the handshake, or whether it's through, I agree with you, the 300-page, 20-lawyer written document really only matters when everything goes south. And so if you could avoid it going south by aligning with the right partners, that's much more valuable, in the beginning.
Go ahead.
So what would you say to be a successful developer, a career path to go into to become that? Would a senior project manager be something to kind of get the experience and learn to be a developer? Or is it another path that you would say, this right here will put you in a position to be that successful developer?
That was going to be my question. I was going to ask you for the first 3 moves somebody should make if they want to start in the next 12 months. That'd be helpful.
Okay, so it depends on, I guess, what side of development is of most interest to you. If you've got a financial mind, then there's the financial path of being the deal creator, right? If it's the construction side, if you don't have construction experience, get a job as a superintendent and work your way up to a project manager. And because the jobs are, you have to know what the sticks are before you're buying the sticks, right? So, that's, and it could be the property management side, because that's the other part that we haven't talked about, is you can buy the building, but if you don't know how to manage the building and maintain the building, you'll find yourself with an empty building. Right, making sure your leases are well written so that you are protecting yourself and your property. Because it goes, it's like, to your point, Garrett, it's 4-letter word is cash call, right? And that's when there's not enough revenue there to cover the cost of the new roof. So I need $100,000 to do this, and we have to do it because the banks are going to inspect your property. So they're going to make sure that you're maintaining the property that they're investing in. And so I think it's understanding what piques your interest and chasing, kind of going in that path, because the financial side and the construction side of development and the management side, they're all equally wildly different from each other.
So I'm going to take you 2 different kind of places. And one place is, I've addressed this already when I talked about what I did wrong. So none of you have to do what I did wrong ever again, but you can do it right. Nobody taught me this, because my mom wasn't a real investor. My dad died when I was 19, when I got started, and I thought I knew it all. So, so having a job, having a career, having something where you're making significantly more than you're spending on yourself. Go back to the cars and the fancy house, the fancier car. That's what we tend to do sometimes. But if we need to be able to make more in our job, in our career. Now, it would be nice if that career were the kinds of things that Jimmy was doing when he was younger, right? That built up to a place where he was even knowledgeable as a developer. But as long as you can make significantly more, that puts you in a safer place to be a developer, be an investor. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing I'll say is just ways to get started, which is more similar to what Jason did than what Jimmy has done. Because Jimmy's saying, yeah, I've got a piece of these different things and I'm bringing them forward. And those pieces, those 10% pieces can be really big and nice and beautiful. But most of us aren't in a career pattern like Jimmy's that you can become a developer. So how do you buy those properties? First off, as I mentioned, you buy them owner-occupied legitimately and live in them. You don't have to live in them for 5 years. You can live in them for 5 months. I mean, most of the owner-occupied loans actually say the intent to live in. It doesn't say more than 1 year, more than 2 years, more than X years. So you need to legitimately buy them to live in. But that's a great way, especially if it's a duplex, a triplex, or a quad, which you can buy as a single-family home with a single-family owner-occupied loan. But there are other things, there are other ways, especially now that we have thousands of houses in Hampton Roads with 2.5%, 2.25% is the lowest I've seen, but 2.25% to 3.75% or 4% loans all over Hampton Roads. Buying those properties on a land contract or subject to the mortgage is a great way to begin to actually to create investment properties. Now, that's not technically being a developer, but as you buy that $250,000 house and you continue working in your job, making $300 and only spending $125 to live on, or $150 to live on, and you build up to a $300,000 income, you're now building cash, and you're trying to find these properties with the low interest rate loans. They're not technically assumable, but it is legal to buy them subject to the mortgage and on a land contract. And so those are just some practical ways to start to build equity. And as you build equity and have an income flow that's greater than your income, then you got to figure out how to get specific knowledge in the area of however you're going to be a developer, because it is extremely complicated and getting more complicated. And like has been said, no two transactions, no two development deals are the same. And there are multiple ways to get burned on all of them.
Want to react to that? If not, I've got 2 more questions and we'll close it. You good? Okay. Can you give an example, share a project that truly transformed a neighborhood?
All right, so not far from here, towns, I guess on Bonnie Road. We bought this site in 2001. Centera owned it, and bought the site. And Bonnie Road did not connect. We built one apartment complex, Midtown Apartments there. That was, and then gosh, it was probably 15 years later. The city approached us to help them build the Constitution Street, Constitution Drive Bridge extended. So that development, that now when you leave, you can go to Bonnie Road this way. Before crossing Thalia Creek, almost connecting Convergence Office Park to Town Center, further extending the Town Center reach.
You guys know what he's talking about?
Yeah.
Right here.
So we built that, and then we have the apartments there on the corner now that we finished about 4 years ago now, Constitution Apartments, as well as the hotel that Akil Jane built. So that development, piled a bunch of trees, point, has almost unlocked a new pathway to avoid and to get back into those neighborhoods back there that doesn't require you having to go on Independence and then turn on Bonnie Road. So a connectivity point of view.
And those are some beautiful apartments too. Thank you.
So, I'm thinking of, I mentioned that we're in affordable housing development, right? And so we wind up dealing with certain populations that need housing, stable, safe housing, obviously, but then along the way, there are other needs that should be addressed in their lives as well, right? And so I'm just thinking of a property where we got a chance to align with an organization that provided healthy meals. We got a chance to align with an organization that provided, casework management. And then we got some people into some job training programs. We got a chance to think about the resident from a holistic perspective, because, and selfishly, the healthier and the more mentally stable and the better my residents have relationships with their family and their neighbors, the better community and the easier to manage and the less costly the property is for me, right? And so getting a chance to address the other parts of the life as well made our residents part of our community and made our community a stronger part of the community around because of that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Do you want to share one, Greg? You good? Okay. All right. So my closing question then, was there a question? Hand up? Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to ask Jimmy and Jason, what are some good and bad examples of just partnerships for departments?
Honesty, integrity, and forethought. Bad example, partner that steals money from you. We can go into a whole thing about that, but that's a bad example.
Yeah, I mean, the hotel partner with Akil Jane, you mentioned it too. That was a handshake deal. We never had a contract. Stand by your word, picking the person. We, as us four younger generation, look to develop new stuff. We're trying to find equity. We don't have the equity stack that our older guys have. They're 80. They don't want to put their money to work anymore. they might not get the return. So, so understanding that and trying to make sure that you trust the person, you have a relationship with them. I mean, we've had one deal that went bad that the partner didn't go bad. It had a lot of cost overruns, took a lot longer than expected, and the partner demanded their money back. That was a painful situation. It ruined that relationship. And there was probably a bit of ego on both sides that really were the catalyst to it not being able to be kind of figured out. But not letting egos get in the way, understanding the person, making sure that when you really trust them, that you feel like you can trust them. Because there are plenty of people out there that they'll be your friend, they're really interested, they want to do the work with you, and then it comes the time where it's trying to get it done, and it's clear that they're looking out for themselves.
I think George Bush said, but
You don't have a
but
link.
verified, right? So you can trust Reagan, okay, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. One gold nugget that you'd like to share in closing, if any. You guys have been dropping all kinds of nuggets, so no pressure.
Make sure you build your team, whether it's your internal team, your external team, who's on top of the finances, who's on top of the construction, who's on top of the lease up, who's on top of the exit sale, make sure all the parts of the deal are covered by somebody that knows what they're doing and will be responsible for making sure it comes through.
I knew you were going to ask this question. I wrote down 3 and they'll be short.
Okay.
There's too much fake it till you make it out here. A lot of fake it till you make it. Secondly, you will succeed if you don't quit. Pretty simple. And a nugget that's tangible, find the 80-year-olds. He's talked about the 80-year-olds in a slightly different way. Of wealthy people that have made it, that don't want to put risk capital out there in the transactions anymore, and they moved to Florida, right? They're kind of out of touch a little bit. But find the 80-year-olds, because again, I'm much more from a residential real estate investment side. Find the 80-year-olds with multiple properties that they're not maintaining anymore, and figure out a way to come into their lives and benefit them on a win-win relationship. Win-lose is a lose-lose. But come into their life in a win-win relationship. If it's your uncle or your aunt, that's great, but it can be your neighbor, it can be a widow, that the husband was the one that dealt with the properties, and now she has 8 or 10 properties and they're in Portsmouth, they're falling apart. You find those 80-year-olds that are willing to allow you into their life, provide the energy that they don't have anymore, provide the work ethic that they don't have anymore, and somehow figure a way to partner with them and ultimately get a part of or purchase from them. A lot of times they'll do owner financing, especially once you've built the trust through you being there and not being greedy and being a servant to them.
And I would say, the previous panel, you mentioned the tax credits, and we were an affordable developer for many, many years. And so I think understanding the thing is understanding what is all the options out there. How do you get it done? From the bigger jobs to the smaller jobs. And there are certainly programs out there, whether you're buying homes or building duplexes, triplexes, complexes, where maybe the equity maybe there isn't any equity required, or maybe you find someone who has the property or the asset that you can help put it to work and capture it that way. Reading everything that you can consume, following the market trends, and probably not jumping in until you really know you're ready. Like if you're unsure, that's going to sink in. It's going to overtake. I'm unsure if I can do this. This is a lot, and it is a lot of risk. but it's very rewarding. And the big thing is that doing it slow is not a bad thing, right? And that first $100 that grows over time, and it can set you up. I mean, we joke in our office, like, the reason those 80-year-old guys are still there, because you never really retire. You're always kind of worried, you're wondering about your assets, and that's not a problem. Like, it's your life, it's what you've kind of dedicated yourself to, but it affords, like, the ability to almost create lifetime income, right? There was a question about that we didn't get to about creating generational wealth. And so you're setting your family up, your kids, their kids, and making and you also need a good attorney. You also need a good CPA so that they can advise you on how to structure these things, making sure that everything you buy is in a separate LLC so that you're protecting your personal assets. So as you all venture into this world, the key here is to make sure you're also protecting yourself and everything you own, so that if something does go wrong, they're going to take that thing, not your home, not everything, right? So, because it can, and sometimes things don't work out, and it's not about thinking of failure. Go, okay, I learned that lesson. One thing I stress to people is when we've had stuff that hasn't worked out, it's cool. At the end of this project, we're gonna write everything down that we missed. And we're gonna create this almost like a checklist. Like, we missed these few things. So, learning from your mistakes are good. They help shape the future, and they protect the future, I guess, in a way. And it just can feel daunting, feel like unattainable, but it's there. Almost every developer in town was once the guy, scrounging up dollars to make it work. And if you have the drive and ambition, you can do it. You can't be lazy. You got to be hungry and work for it. But every one of you all in this room can do it. Like, I'm not more special than anyone else here.
One more, Greg. Go ahead.
So one of the questions you had on the sheet to prepare us was about generational wealth, and you just mentioned it.
Yep.
So at 33 years old, when prime interest rate was 21%, I was not prime. My banks were charging 23% because I was less than prime. Okay? Everybody was in trouble. Every real estate holder was in trouble. A gentleman named Bush died. He had some apartment complexes, had some estate problems. I found out about it, and I said, what can I do to help? I didn't know him. I don't even know how I really got into that conversation with the 50-year-old, 60-year-old children of this gentleman that had died. He didn't have things set right in terms of his estate planning, LLCs, separate LLCs, and he had a huge estate tax problem. I went to a CPA who had an investor friend, and the three of us together bought a 300-unit apartment complex in Norfolk for $5,000 per unit. $1.5 million. 4 or 5 years later, because I wasn't generating enough income, I was doing too much investing. 3 or 4 or 5 years later, I had to sell out my share, my 20% share. I sold out for a lot of money. This was a lot of money at the time, $180,000. I got a check for $180,000. I'm in my 30s. This is when houses were $50,000, $60,000. That was a lot of money, right? And that's like 1.2 million today. If I would have kept that, I did the math because you asked that question. Today, in the back conference room, I did the math. My 20% today, 7.2 million. I sold out for $180,000 because I wasn't making enough money to pay my bills. If I'd have held it, $7.2 million, that's real money.
Ladies
Y'all
and
can stay all
gentlemen,
day
please
long.
join me.
Y'all can talk to y'all all day.
A round of applause for this amazing panel. Thank you. So my hope is that we are leaving RealCon feeling informed and inspired, right? We're ready for whatever our next step is, whether it's we're gonna join the Red Academy, we're gonna join the Liz Emerge program, we're gonna partner up, we're gonna make a phone call to the city, right? Do we feel like we all know what our next step is?
Yeah.
Who feels like they don't know what their next step is? You're not sure.
I feel like the next step is to make sure you join Black Brand.
That's a good next step. And Brian can actually help you with that. Anybody in the room that wants to join Black Brand today, we've got some materials around. We'd love to have you as a member. Thank you for that. I'm gonna ask you guys to exit